Good morning. My name is Saad Bahari. I'm one of the Security and Network Partner Managers here at Google, and I'm here with Trey.
Hi, my name is Trey. I lead the Solution Engineering team at Cloudflare.
And today we're going to talk about LUSH's migration from AWS to Google Cloud and how Cloudflare, one of our top CDN partners, helped with that migration. Now, throughout our presentation, we're going to talk about security, what CDNs do, and then we're going to also give you a demo of how you can set up a server on a CDN and how to actually start using that. So it should be a fairly interactive demo. One of the main things that many people not realize is the amount of effort that Google has put into security. You may be familiar with safe browsing that protects over 3 billion devices every day. And that's something Google has done, not for profit, but just out of our own commitment to security. And that's information we share with other browsers, with IE, with Firefox, with basically any developer out there. If you actually look at what we do, we have over 600 engineers dedicated to security and privacy here at Google, which is more than a lot of other pure play security companies. And the result of that is we're trying to make the internet a more secure place for our users. We believe that rising that security awareness level makes it easier for our customer, makes it just better for everyone. So we'll talk a little bit about how that philosophy actually translates into Google Cloud. If you actually look at some of the other open source projects out there, even if you look at iOS, you'll see Google is one of the top reporters of bugs and security vulnerabilities. And again, we're trying to make it more secure for everyone using our products. So when we talk about Google Cloud, it really starts from the bottom up, really from the hardware level, from the second a device boots up, the OS, the applications, the network, the storage, the usage, the reputation. So if you actually look a little bit more in depth, you get a pretty good idea of all the different areas that we have security.
It's a lot of areas you got there on the slide.
Yeah, it's a lot, and actually any of these areas you can go online and see more in depth. We just talked about Kubernetes and encryption before, so you can definitely dig in deeper. One of the brief things I'll mention is Titan, our secure identification for boot ups. As you probably are aware, Google has many different data centers which are run by us, but we're also in a lot of third-party data centers. And so when a hardware device boots up, we want to make sure that that is one of our devices. We know what it is, what it's supposed to do, and then we have actual Google-written security codes to monitor that. And that works hand in hand with the Titan chip to actually make sure we have that secure level of trust from the second a device is powered on to when a users can use it, when network traffic is going across, where devices are stored, where users are accessing it, who's accessing it, where it is, what is the reputation of that binary, the application, all of that goes into trying to give the most secure connection and experience to our users.
So from the bottom all the way up through the application layer.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
And so we look at that, network is a big part of that. And you can see here, this is a lot of our data center locations. You see all of the leased and owned fiber that Google has. And what that really translates to for our users is no matter where you're in the world, you're pretty close to a Google data center or Google location that can handle your traffic. And yeah, this is probably one of the largest networks in the world and really allows for very fast connectivity. And I think that really matches up with Cloudflare's network.
Yeah, so Cloudflare, we have also one of the world's largest networks, although we are focused not on compute and sort of infrastructure as a service, but we're focused on providing a smart network that sits in between the web visitor or API consumer and the origin infrastructure, which could be GCP. Cloudflare is someone you may not have heard of, but you definitely used us if you use the internet. We proxy around 10% of all HTTP requests today. That's with over 6 million domains on Cloudflare. We're a fairly large presence, but we're sort of like plumbing on the internet. We're there, we're moving things along, and our job is to make sure that we stop threats and try to improve performance as traffic is flowing through our network.
So when you say 6 million domains, you mean actually managing the DNS records, whether it's A records, CNAMEs, AAA, zones, all of that?
Yeah, so that's one of the services at Cloudflare is to be an authoritative DNS provider. We're the world's largest authoritative DNS provider. Customers can also CNAME specific subdomains over to us. And we're handling not only DNS for a lot of these customers, but we're also handling proxying of HTTP traffic and HTTPS. So we do a lot of SSL.
So, and you guys are in 53 of our locations where we have direct connections. So it really allows for that quick transfer of data for anybody who's looking to cache or connect to their backend storage that might be on Google.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the Cloud CDN Interconnect program with Google, you can see we sit sort of in between the visitor and the Google Cloud Platform. We try to remove sort of all the threats and then also speed up the communication that goes from the visitor to GCP. And the nice thing is that we have these direct connects. I mean, basically, essentially a wire between the Cloudflare data center and the Google Cloud Platform data centers in 53 locations, which is nearly half of the locations. That has all kinds of advantages because it's higher performance and you don't have, you're not having to worry about congestion or fighting the public internet.
Yeah.
But on top of that, as a GCP customer, you pay a significantly discounted egress pricing when you're going over this sort of, you're not going over the internet, you're going over this sort of private connection between GCP and Cloudflare.
Cheaper, faster connectivity.
Cheaper, faster, better. What's not to like?
Yeah.
Choose all three. And that's the connection between Cloudflare and Google. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to say, we have one of our many joint customers is customer LUSH, who was in a they had a big migration over to GCP. They had to do it really quickly. Interestingly enough, they were already a Cloudflare customer before they moved over to GCP. But tell me a little bit about, once they were already on Cloudflare, but tell us about their migration to GCP.
So this is something Lush decided basically on a Friday, and they had to get started on Monday and had 22 days to move everything, all of their workloads.
I love it when my boss does that.
Yeah, and so they had a very short period of time. I mean, part of it is just around availability, being able to scale up appropriately as they had holiday season sales. The other part of it was they wanted to have their online presence match their corporate philosophy. A very large percentage of our network electrical costs come from renewable sources, and that was something that was important to them. So from technology to philosophy, it was just very well aligned, and so it made sense to make that move quickly and have a better experience for their customers at the same time as save money, which is always important.
Move your whole infrastructure in 3 weeks? Let's see how fast you can do it.
So, Lush here had a great amount of savings. We're just talking a little bit about that. Average customer savings, hit rate, what do you think that?
Exactly. So as an example, Lush as a customer, they see about a 75% bandwidth savings, but also a 95% reduction in the number of requests to their origin. And so that just sort of reduces the amount of infrastructure they need on their origin because we're either filtering out bad traffic or caching results. Part of that, of course, is that we stop about 60,000 threats a month for them, and that's something to be expected with the Cloudflare infrastructure and Cloudflare network. We run one of the largest sort of security networks in the world and stop these threats.
And really, the hit rate is dependent on what that customer is serving. So, like if you have a lot of cat pictures versus you have super dynamic API.
Yeah, exactly. If you're serving a bunch of GIFs, you can get your cache hit rate up into the high 90s, maybe over 99%. If you are a weather application and someone's checking the weather, your hit rate might be a little bit lower because if you're delivering weather by zip code, there's not that many people per zip code checking for weather.
And can I actually set my cache rates by different regions, by different geographies, and say, hey, this geography I want this cached versus another geography I want to have something else cached?
It's possible to go into deep levels of customization, but generally the caching is going to be around per URL. Okay. You can look at based on certain headers or cookies, etc. So there's a lot of caching that can be done, and the flip side of that, of course, is you can get fine-grained control around rate limiting, the web application firewall, or IP reputation database, so you can be adding sort of security and performance at the same time.
Okay, great. So one of the most important things when you're looking to do this is actually making sure you have a SSL certificate that's followed best practices. Not all SSL certificates are created equally.
Yeah, exactly. So, you guys out there, what you are looking at is migrating over to GCP or independent of where your origin infrastructure runs and independent of whatever security network you run. We just wanted to share with you some of these sort of security best practices. And as you mentioned, like everything should be SSL at this point. If you don't know that, this is your last warning.
Yeah.
Everything should be over SSL. Chrome as of next month is going to start sort of positively identifying websites that are not encrypted with a insecure flag if you want to be able to retain the trust. And a key thing is that, not all SSL is created equal. Some SSL is more secure than others. Some SSL is faster than others. We shared a link on these slides. We can go look at the SSL Labs best practices. They're a third party, but you want to do things like support session resumption and HTTP2, et cetera. So that's how you're going to get
Google
the best.
also has a series of SSL best practices for anyone who's creating that walk you through how to create the right type of key requests, where you want to load it. And when you're using Cloudflare, where does the SSL session terminate?
So Cloudflare will terminate the SSL session at the Cloudflare network, and we'll make sure that you have essentially the best SSL. If you go check your SSL grade, you can get an A or an A+ with our SSL. We decrypt because we need to be able to protect against layer 7 attacks and look within the application layer. Then we re-encrypt when we go back to the origin. So it sits and it's encrypted as it goes across the
wire. Okay. And then also you can provide protection for the DNS services, because that's another vector of attack where someone can just knock out your DNS or try to inject some bad DNS records, and you'll as far as the users are concerned, they just can't get to your website. Exactly.
So, that's the last bullet point on here. A lot of things, when people look at DDoS prevention and security, they forget about the fact that DNS infrastructure is one of the key things that you need to protect. It's the internet's phone book, and if you can't find someone's phone number, you can't call them, and you're knocked offline. We all remember the Dyn attack in October of last year. Took like a third of the internet offline.
Yeah, I think people have been really focused on DDoS, which you guys also provide protection for. But instead of just be able to throw so much traffic is knocking your website, which is getting harder and harder to do as people realize they need bigger pipes. Much easier if I knock out your DNS record and then nobody can find you. I don't need as much firepower.
Exactly. They're always looking for the next chink in the armor. Beyond DNS and SSL, other things to definitely want to make sure you're taking care of are large layer 3 and layer 4 floods. So this is sort of like UDP floods from DNS amplification. There's sort of a caveman with a club. It's not very sophisticated, but just sort of fills up your pipes.
Yeah.
Luckily, if you're on GCP, you've got very, very big pipes.
Yeah.
Past that, though, then you also have to worry about layer 7. Less sophisticated is, what if someone goes and searches the product pages on your e-commerce site, but they just decide to search your product pages 10,000 times a second? Can your application infrastructure handle that? And even if it can scale up to that, do you want to pay to scale it?
Right.
And then beyond that, while those attacks are occurring, you should also be aware of just sort of application vulnerabilities where people are going to try to extract data, try to compromise.
SQL injection, cross-site scripting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these are sort of the layers that we want to make sure that you are taking care of.
Okay, great. So, those are sort of the basics of it, but today we're going to actually show people a demo on how they can set up some of these services, protections on Cloudflare, and how, they can protect themselves.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into the Cloudflare demo and see how it is that Cloudflare can be configured to sort of meet some of those requirements we just talked about. So setting the scene for our demo here, this is going to be a live demo, so feel free to play along from home if you like. We have a web application. Let's assume it's a web application, and we grew from a US-only sort of audience. We had lots of folks in North America, but my business has taken off, and it's doing great. And it's now distributed out to Australia and the UK. Previously, I was on, let's say I had a single origin on AWS, but in order to support a geographically distributed origin, I needed the Google Spanner database.
Yep.
And I'm moving over to GCP, and now I can have an origin in GCP in Australia, US West, and Europe at the same time.
And that's, for those not familiar, BigQuery, Google Spanner, this is really what some of Google's technology shines, where you can have these globally distributed databases. But once I have the globally distributed databases, I need to be able to access it from everywhere.
Exactly.
And be able to hit the cache rates.
Routing all your traffic. So we're going to set up a geo load balancing that'll migrate our traffic over. We're going to also look at those layer 7 protections, the layer 7 floods. We'll set up a rate limiting rule and see that come into effect. We'll also make sure that Cloudflare's SSL is working. We'll turn on a WAF and check for sort of SQL injection. And then the little special thing, like any migration project, there's always that extra person that wasn't reading their email or didn't check in at the meetings, and we're going to see how to handle.
So we're going to do
guys.
all this live. So hopefully the demo gods are with us. But,
all right. Let's see how we go.
Let's go.
All right. So just to jump in here, what I've done is I should be. I'm going to go ahead and log into Cloudflare.
And so this is basically we're going to create a URL, or you already have the URL, and start migrating to it.
Yeah, so I've already added a domain, multicloud.tech, to Cloudflare. The sign-up process is about 5 minutes, and
most of that is DNS.
Yeah, and really what you're doing is you are you can either be, it's a DNS change. So Cloudflare can become your authoritative DNS provider, or you could CNAME over specific subdomains. Now, looking in here, I'll just start at DNS, because this is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
How does Cloudflare work? So in our DNS infrastructure, we got a whole 4 records, but we can see the www record is going to the domain apex. The domain apex is going to this IP address. And that's our AWS origin to start with. We'll see this in our DNS infrastructure. We'll see this sort of orange cloud and gray cloud. And what is the difference there? If we look and do a query here, can you guys see my terminal? If I do a dig on www.multicloud.tech, we will see, the question come back and answer. These are a bunch of Cloudflare IPs, and I'm going to go ahead and maximize this window, make it a little easier to see. Is that looking good?
Okay.
All right. And so we see those are that orange clouded record, the www. But what I also had created here, just for usability, is this. I'm going to call this origin. And I've got a warning here. You shouldn't really have things pointing to your origin that are gray clouded, because it allows people to hit directly to your origin. But
bypass all the protection.
Yeah, you don't want to bypass protection, but just for demonstration purposes, I've got this record gray clouded. So if I do DNS lookup on origin.multicloud.tech, then we'll see that it's returning back the origin IP address. And really what this is doing is when you orange cloud a record in Cloudflare, it's routing all of your customers through the Cloudflare network. And if you gray cloud the record, then everyone's just going to go straight to your origin server. So it's just a simple sort of on-off switch for the Cloudflare network. Once that's in place, all right, so we're going to now we're sending traffic now through Cloudflare. So if you went to www.multicloud.tech, wherever you are, you'd be going through the Cloudflare network right now to hit this website. So if I wanted to look at multicloud.tech, I'm going to refresh this. I'm going through the website, and we're hitting our AWS infrastructure. But let's go ahead and set up a load balancer.
Yeah.
We're going to go.
Just have this great business. Australia's peaking. They're just waking up.
Yeah, we've got folks in Australia, we've got folks in the UK. We want to make sure it's fast for everybody, and now that we have local infrastructure, we can get around that pesky problem of the speed of light. Somehow we can never seem to get around that. But we'll solve it today. Yeah, here's us fighting physics. Yeah. So I'm going to create a load balancer here called lb1.multicloud.tech, and move along here. So when you create a load balancer, it just creates another DNS record that can be used to accept traffic. Now I'm going to create a few origin pools, because the idea is that we could have 10 origins in Australia, 30 in North America, and 15 in Europe if we wanted to.
Am I coming to that one DNS record, and then that's getting sent out to different locations, or am I going to come to multiple DNS records that are just going to do round robin?
It's a great question. So really what's happening is you're just seeing the Cloudflare IP on the outside. It's an Anycast network, so it's the same IP all over the world. You connect to Cloudflare, and then this is all happening behind the scenes. So this is essentially.
So I don't need to worry about maintaining the DNS records, what do I want to do for load balancing. You've taken care of all of that.
Exactly. So we're going to set up our first origin pool, and origin pool is only going to have one origin in it because this is a demo. But we'll start with the first one in US West, and let me grab my IP address. We're going to go with our GCP origin in US West. So GCP US West. It's at this IP address, and we're going to do an active health check of just the root page.
And I can customize that, obviously, if I want something more specific.
Exactly. In that health check, that's where you can set the number of times it has to fail before it's unhealthy, and and how often does it test
or API.
Exactly. Does it check a specific URL? Does it check for certain status codes? All right. So we've got our US West set up. So let's also set up Australia. Let's see if I can spell that correctly. And we're going to do GCP in Australia. Let's grab that IP. Supports IPv4 and IPv6 or host names here. And we're going to go ahead and set the same monitor. And we're going to save that guy and just give that a second for the API to respond. And then we still need to do our European origin. So I'm going to grab that origin here and create another pool.
So now I've got locations basically all around the world.
Yeah, exactly. So we have an origin here, GCP Europe. That's its IP address. Same health check monitor, and we'll hit save. So now what we're doing, we created 3 origin pools, and as I was saying, those origin pools could hold more than one origin each. And if you added multiple origins in a pool, it would just round robin between those 3, or however many origins you have in that pool. Now we have 3 pools, and now what we can do is we can do a little bit cleverer migration between them. So if you had a active passive sort of data center setup, you could use 2 pools and you put them in this right order. So you'd say origin pool number 1, origin pool number 2, and it would be active then passive. In this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to say if everything else fails, if let's say Europe fails, we want to fail back over to the US.
Right.
We'll say US is our primary. We're going to make Europe secondary globally.
It's kind of our priority list.
Exactly, and then Australia third.
Maybe based on cost, availability.
And let's say we had the most infrastructure in the US, second most in Europe, and you're just looking at performance there. But then we also want to do some geo routing. So let's choose North America. I don't need to really route because everyone's going to North America to start with. Let's go ahead and choose which regions we're going to do some geo routing with. So we're going to get Europe, South America. We don't really need to route, but Oceania, the Middle East, Africa, Southern Africa, India.
That's a lot of different regions.
We got a lot of, there's a big world out there. We have, and Asia, so different parts of Asia. So we're going to take Europe, and we're going to send that to the European origin. Eastern Europe to the European origin. Oceania will go to Australia. Middle East we'll send to Europe. North Africa, let's send that to Europe. South Africa, let's send that to Europe. India is, let's call that
gray.
Yeah, let's send that to Australia. It's good over in that region. So if you're following along from India, soon you'll see the website come from the GCP origin in Australia. And Northeast Asia, that's Asia, so we'll send that to Australia. And now we're going to hit next, and we're ready to sort of save and deploy. A lot of clicks.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever
that was
set up
less than 10 minutes. Then we actually set up an infrastructure, set up our pool, set up our geo routing, and set up basically protection. And this is live now, right?
This is live. This is the live demo, and really worked. All right. We have a load balancer set up, and we
see our health checks over there.
Origins, and we can see these origins are already healthy. So we're doing active health checks and probes to each of these data centers. So now we're going to come over here, is we're going to say, all right, now www, which was going to our, which was just going to the Apex record, which essentially went to AWS. Yes. We're going to send this to the load balancer. The other thing I want to do is I want to take the zone Apex, multicloud.tech, and I want to send that to the load balancer as well. This is something else that's sort of special with Cloudflare. If you've ever had to try to CNAME your Apex record, that's a real bugger. We allow you to do that on our infrastructure because we do a thing called CNAME flattening. So we're going to take the CNAME at the Apex and send it also to the load balancer. So now all the traffic is going to the load balancer. We got a load balancer going, and I also said we're going to set up a WAF, and we're going to set up rate limiting rules, and we're going to make all that work.
So now we're just saying protection. We've set up the infrastructure, we set up routing for it, now we're going to protect it.
Exactly. Now, I'm running out of time already on my demo, so how hard is it to set up a WAF? Have you set up those very often?
Pretty much at least the all-day process.
Yeah.
So set up rules.
All right, our WAF is on. Hit the on button. It's pretty easy. We made this product pretty easy to use. And we'll also turn on the OS rule set and put that in block mode. So our WAF is fully engaged. And let's go ahead and set up a rate limiting rule, because you want to be able to stop if someone's attacking, just hammering away at your website. So we'll just call this a global rule on HTTPS. It'll just say any URL that you're checking. If you're doing more
I can have different rule sets for different part of my website. If I'm managing multiple customers or there's different regions, I can say, hey, I want this part of my site or this subdomain one type of protection versus another part.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common use cases is to protect your login page, and we can look at the response code and say, if you're getting 200s, that's fine, but if you're getting 401s or 403s, then clearly
something's gone wrong.
You're logging in with the wrong password, so we're going to really restrict you. So what we said is, if you make more than 10 requests in 30 seconds, we're going to block you for 30 seconds. So we have that rate limiting rule in place too. Oh, if I type it in.
And that's really going to stop those automated bot attacks where people are trying credential stuffing. They're just trying to see how fast can I hammer on a login page through these credential dumps that have gone from somewhere and see which ones work.
Exactly. All right, so now let's prove this all working. Let's see how it goes. Before we looked at, loaded this web page, it came from AWS. Now, if I do a refresh, you say, hey, Google Cloud Platform. So
demo work.
Look at that, poof. And I'm coming from US West. If you happen to be watching this from Australia, you'll see that you're coming from the Australian data center. If you're watching this from Europe and you hit the same website, you'd see it in Europe. So load balancing works. Now let's check our WAF. And I snuck a little trick in here in one of my notes, just because I wanted to remember a SQL injection command.
You don't remember that offhand?
No, yeah, I don't know. It's shameful.
It's shameful, yeah.
But here's a simple SQL injection query. So maybe I was trying to dump the customer
database.
record base. And what we'll see, all right, cool, I've been blocked.
Yeah.
The WAF is in place. That never even got to GCP, never hit your infrastructure. And it's important, of course, to have that layered security. You've got Google security, but then also you want to have it out as close to
There's no reason to let that actually hit your infrastructure. You know it's bad right before it gets through, before it starts wasting bandwidth, resources in the back end. You can just cut it off at the knees and never let it get through.
Exactly, and we can see here's the request that came through and was just blocked. The rules triggered. Actually, I see somebody else is actually managed to hit. Now we have.
Now you've given people a reason to try and break
exactly.
into the one pager.
All right, and last thing, we need to do rate limiting. So I set up a rate limit, said 10.
I think we have 1 minute left.
Yeah, all right. So thankfully, I've already generated my my curl here. Let me just bring that up to the top of the screen. So I'm going to do 200 requests. I'm going to curl multicloud.tech, and I'm just grepping for the HTTP status code that comes back. So let's see how it goes. I'm too many requests. I've been blocked.
Too many, yes.
Yeah, so you can see that kicks in pretty quickly.
We've stopped the script kiddies.
Yeah, we stopped the script kiddies. My scripts are maybe not as good as theirs, but we'll see how it goes.
It might be 2 lines of code.
But there's one last thing, and I apologize we have a minute, but like all migrations, there's always something that comes up.
Oh yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, and so what happened was, we had Jerry came to us and said, hey, my website, Jerry in marketing was like, hey, my website stopped working. When I'm trying to get to, I'm still rate limited, but I'll show that in a second. My website just stopped working and I can't find it anymore. What's going on? And if we looked, I would have gotten a 404 if I wasn't rate limited, but if we look on the origin that was back on AWS.
I love that background.
He's got this awesome, old marketing site, and you know what? We're not going to migrate it to GCP because it's getting killed off in
I think I saw that in an episode of The Office.
Yeah, so
We're going back.
This is like 6 months from now, we're going to be killing this website, so no need to migrate it. But how can you take a path, like a layer 7 route, and route it over to AWS? We're going to do this quickly. I have the legacy origin defined here. And what I'll do in Cloudflare is create a thing called a page rule. And this way we can take the website, so www.multicloud.tech/legacy/star. So that takes anything under the legacy path.
And just leave that application, everything else back where we had it.
Exactly, and we're going to override the resolution of the origin, and we're going to resolve it to legacy origin.multicloud.tech. And if I do this really fast, I might see the 404 first. Oh. All right, so this is always getting a 404 because, going through the load balancer, hitting GCP, the legacy application is not on GCP, but it's on AWS. Now I'm on www. I've got I got to let that page rule save. All right, so page rule's in place. Now this has to actually replicate out globally to a bunch of data centers after hitting it here. And let's see when we show up. In a second here, we should get the ability to route requests for multicloud.tech over.
So in this 10 minutes that we've had, we've
there you go.
set up pools, we've set up rules, we've actually kept some of our legacy stuff back where it was. We showed protection against script kiddies and credential stuffings, and really did it all live in, I think, 10, 15 minutes, which is pretty amazing. Something that can easily take a month.
If anybody used to build this stuff with boxes back in the day when you were programming Cisco box, this looks a lot easier, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you very much for putting it up with me.
Yeah, great. I think we're going to be ready for question and answer in a few seconds. Great, so we're back. One of the first questions about GCP is traffic within GCP encrypted. Yes, absolutely, traffic within GCP is encrypted. Traffic as REST is encrypted. We can give you a link on that actually goes into additional detail on how that encryption occurs from point to point, especially if you're going across the leases that have been, across the fiber that's been leased by Google.
Another question we have is the difference between Cloudflare and Google's DNS service. Both great authoritative DNS providers. I'm sure we could arm wrestle about which one's better, but you could use essentially either provider if you like.
This is just worked within Cloudflare, so if I want to set up DNS rules and I'm tying up to WAF, that's works within one system. If you want to go out and set up in Google's DNS or a different DNS service, you could do that as well. You just have to come back and make sure you follow all of your paths and your records match.
Yeah.
Does Google have a recommendation around SSL certificates? Yes. So we do have a set of best practices around how to create those. So we walk you through that step by step. Type of SSL certificates that we recommend, and if whether or not to use wildcards, all of that. If you just search Google SSL best practices, that should be the first link that comes up.
Another question is, can Cloudflare provide DNS services?
I think we should already know that, yes.
The answer is yes. One other thing to be aware of, though, is that Cloudflare offers a solution called DNS Firewall. So for large providers that run their own DNS infrastructure, we can act as a caching proxy in front of that DNS infrastructure as well to accelerate and protect that just from DDoS. Question 5, it's mine, looks like.
Yeah.
If I use Cloudflare, do I still have the source IP of the client? That's really important. Clearly, you want to have that logic in your application. Cloudflare passes that through in headers, both the CF connecting IP header as well as X404.
And the CF connecting header, that's pretty much industry standard. So if you're using anything else, you should already be configured to look for that IP header.
Yeah, the X404 definitely is the one that everybody uses, and it's added there already.
How do I get started with Cloudflare? Is it in GCP Launcher? Yes, it is in GCP Launcher, so it's pretty easy to start.
Or go to cloudflare.com and hit sign up. And so it's pretty easy.
if I use a web application firewall today, what WAF features does Cloudflare support?
So Cloudflare supports most WAF features. We can have custom rules written for you. We can run the OS rule set. In addition to that, there's the Cloudflare written rule set. Our own internal security team writes rules, and those are based on, we see about 10% of HTTP requests on the internet. Based on that, we write rules of attacks that we know are out there and try to stop those. So you get a managed rule set as well. Clearly, you also give sort of reporting and other features. So,
what are some of the considerations for choosing a CDN provider? I mean, part of that could be what's your content? Do you have video files? Is it small files? Are you more concerned with security, mobile? So all of those things, it's want to take a look at. I think Cloudflare is really well known for their security features, what they can do before an attacker gets access or even gets past the Cloudflare.
Exactly. I think that one of the interesting things with choosing a CDN provider is, are you doing just static asset delivery? Well, most people can do that. There's nothing particularly special. You're just spiking the speed of light, and most sort of tier 1 CDN providers are all the same, have basically the same performance. The question is, what else do you need to do at the same time?
Yeah.
Should you be stopping security? Should you be doing layer 7 routing? Should you be doing these sort of other intelligent capabilities? Because in the cloud world, before the cloud world, you could have 5 boxes at the top of a rack.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to have your firewall from one vendor and you had a riverbed for WAN optimization, et cetera, it didn't matter because they were 1 millisecond apart. Now, if you want to consume several different services from a cloud provider, they can be 100 milliseconds apart. So you kind of need to consolidate those as much as possible. So when you're looking at CDN providers, think about the other services that you need that provider to provide at the same time.
Great. So I think that's all of the questions we have. Oh, one last one. How many SSL certificates can a customer have on Cloudflare? Is there a limit?
It's nominally, there's no limit. And we have literally can support millions of certificates. So we have.
So they can have different subdomains, can have different type of customers, divisions. Each one can have their own SSL certificate.
You could have a different certificate for every person if you wanted to. So it's pretty easy.
So we have a few other last announcements. So resources. I don't know if we can get to that last slide. But it basically, one of the things that we announced just this morning is Cloudflare and Google teamed up to offer $100,000 in Google Cloud Platform credits and GCP credits for app developers. And that just went live this morning. And I think Cloudflare is committing $100 million to people actually building apps on the platform.
Exactly. Sounds like hundreds the round number we like. $100,000 in GCP credits. And if you're going to build an app to run on the Cloudflare network, there is a $100 million fund to fund the development of Cloudflare apps.
So really just trying to make it as easy as possible for developers to get started. So we have other places you can get resources, cloudflare.com/Google. We'll have more information. And with
hope you enjoyed it and found it informative, and have a great day.